After Nipsey Hussle's daughter inherited a fortune connected to her father's estate, his brother Black Sam finally reacted, and what he had to say perfectly explained why he spent years protecting Nipsey's legacy. When a hip-hop icon dies, the assumption is always the same. The money disappears, the businesses collapse, and within a few years there's nothing left but the music. That is not what happened here. Instead, the opposite happened. And by the time Black Sam finally spoke on it, everything made sense. Stay with us, because by the end of this documentary, you're going to understand exactly what Nipsey was building, why it took years for his children to receive what was rightfully theirs, and what his brother said that proved he understood the mission better than anyone. Yo, what's good, fam? Today, we are going all the way inside the story of Nipsey Hussle's estate, his brother Black Sam's role in protecting and expanding it, and what it means that Imani and Cross's Geedom have now officially inherited a business empire their father built from the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson. If you've been following this story, you know it goes deeper than just a dollar amount. And if you're just catching up, buckle in, because this one is going to change the way you see what Nipsey Hussle was really building. Ermias Joseph Asdom was born on August 15, 1985. And raised in the Crenshaw neighborhood of South Los Angeles. He grew up in circumstances that didn't promise comfort, stability, or a path toward generational wealth. As a teenager, he was affiliated with the Rolling 60s Crips, and by his own admission, the streets were the environment he knew best. But something inside him was different from the beginning. He was a reader. He was a thinker. He absorbed ideas about ownership, economics, and independence at an age when most people around him weren't thinking about any of that. In 2004, at 19 years old, he traveled to Eritrea, his father's home country, and came back changed. He spoke about that trip as a turning point, a moment that clarified what his responsibility was as someone with a platform in a community that had been systematically stripped of economic power for generations. He called it all money in, no money out. It wasn't a catchphrase. It wasn't something he put on a shirt and sold. It was a financial doctrine, a lived philosophy, a daily operating standard that governed everything from how he structured his deals to how he reinvested every dollar he made, and what kinds of assets he chose to build his future around. When Epic Records signed him in 2008 and then ran into financial difficulty, Nipsey didn't scramble for another label deal. He walked away and built his own. In 2010, he established All Money In as his independent record label and released The Marathon, a mixtape that gave the world both a piece of music and a brand identity that would outlast him by decades. He followed that with a marketing campaign called Proud to Pay, pricing the Crenshaw mixtape at $100 per physical copy. He sold out immediately. Jay-Z personally bought 100 copies. But the point wasn't the revenue alone. The point was that a direct relationship with a loyal fan base was worth more than 1 million casual streams of a product you don't own. Every major decision he made after that was built on the same logic. By 2013, he had co-founded the Marathon Agency. By 2017, he opened the Marathon Clothing on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson, a brick and mortar he described as a smart store, the first of its kind, where customers could buy merchandise and use an app to access exclusive content connected to his music. He wasn't just selling clothes, he was building a brand ecosystem at the intersection of tech, fashion, and music in the heart of the neighborhood that raised him. He put it there deliberately. He didn't want the store in Beverly Hills. He didn't want it somewhere that would generate revenue for him while doing nothing for Crenshaw. He wanted the economic lift to flow back to the people who needed it most, which meant planting it on the block where he grew up and ensuring that the success of the brand translated into something tangible for the community around it. That same year, he inked a partnership with Atlantic Records that gave him commercial distribution for his debut album, while retaining complete control of All Money In and its entire roster. It was structured as a distribution partnership, not a traditional record deal, and that distinction was everything. When Victory Lap dropped in February 2018, it debuted near the top of the Billboard 200 and earned a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album. On the Kendrick Lamar collaboration Dedication, he rapped about owning his royalties, his publishing, and his masters. That wasn't a flex. That was a status report. While the music industry was built on artists signing away the assets that generate long-term wealth, Nipsey had structured a deal that let him keep every single one of them. He also co-invested in Vector 90, a co-working space and STEM center in Crenshaw built alongside entrepreneur David Gross designed to connect young talent from underserved communities with Silicon Valley infrastructure and resources. Gross had pitched the idea courtside at a Lakers game. Nipsey told him this is more important than music and showed up at the office the next day. He invested in real estate, including ownership of the plaza at Crenshaw and Slauson, where the Marathon Clothing sat, with long-term plans to redevelop the block into a mixed-use residential and commercial complex that would anchor the neighborhood economically. He was involved in Destination Crenshaw, a public art project designed to transform the corridor culturally and attract investment. He was involved in Our Opportunity, an investment fund channeling capital into communities of color through federal tax incentives. He was building on every front simultaneously, and every front pointed back to the same neighborhood he refused to leave behind. And then on March 31st, 2019, he was shot and killed outside his own store. He was 33 years old. The grief that followed was immediate and enormous. Tributes came from Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, Drake, LeBron James, and thousands of people who had watched him build something in South Los Angeles that felt genuinely different from what the music industry usually produces. His grandmother, Margaret Bout, spoke at the public memorial and said that God had told Nipsey he had done his job and made his mark. Over 20,000 people attended that service at the Staples Center. The procession through Crenshaw stretched for miles. People lined the streets for hours. It was the kind of mourning that a city reserves for its own. Not for visiting celebrities or artists who happen to be from a place but don't stay. For someone who was genuinely embedded in the fabric of the neighborhood, who made decisions that showed he was betting on that community, the same way he was betting on himself. Eric Holder Jr. was eventually convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years to life in prison in February 2023. But long before that resolution, there was a more immediate and deeply complicated problem sitting at the center of everything Nipsey had left behind. He had passed away without a traditional, fully executed will. In California, that means everything he built, every business, every trademark, every dollar of future royalties, every real estate interest, every equity stake, immediately becomes subject to the probate process. The court has to step in, identify all the assets, resolve all the debts, address any competing claims, and eventually approve a distribution plan. In straightforward cases, probate can take a year or two. In a case involving multiple active businesses, a trademark portfolio, music royalties, real estate, minor children with different mothers, and a contested guardianship, it can take much longer. For Nipsey's estate, it would take more than 7 years. This is where Samil Asghedom steps into the story. Known publicly as Black Sam, Nipsey's older brother was appointed administrator of the estate. He had been by Nipsey's side through all of it. The early days on Crenshaw, the opening of the Marathon Clothing, the deals, the community initiatives, the vision. He understood not just what his brother had built, but why he had built it and what it was supposed to become. And the decisions Sam made over the next 7+ years are ultimately why Nipsey's children inherited something worth preserving rather than a depleted remainder of what their father once had. Here's what Sam was looking at when he stepped into that role. The estate was initially valued at roughly $4 million after debts and expenses were resolved. That's not a small number, but it is a long way from $11 million. The businesses were still technically running, but they were running without their founder, with legal uncertainty surrounding nearly every asset, and with courts, creditors, and competing parties all paying close attention. The easy play would have been to liquidate, sell the trademarks, sell the business interests, distribute the cash, and close the probate as fast as possible. That's what a lot of administrators do under pressure. That is not what Black Sam did. He chose to protect, he chose to operate, he chose to expand. And those 3 decisions, made in sequence over 7 years of sustained pressure, are what changed the outcome for those children entirely. Under Sam's administration, the Marathon Clothing on Crenshaw and Slauson kept its doors open. In a lot of cases, when the founder of a brand dies, the business starts dying too. The energy behind the store, the gravitational pull that makes customers show up, tends to be so tied to one person that when they're gone, the whole thing unravels. That didn't happen here. Sam understood that the Marathon Clothing was never just about Nipsey as a celebrity. It was about an idea. The store on Crenshaw and Slauson represented something to the neighborhood, to the culture, to everyone who believed that Black ownership and community investment were the right path forward. Closing it would have been a betrayal of that idea. So Sam kept it open, kept it staffed, kept the mission visible on the block where Nipsey had planted it, and let the store continue doing exactly what it was designed to do: anchor the brand in the community it was built for. The Puma partnership, one of Nipsey's most significant commercial relationships, continued contributing to a trust fund established for the children throughout the probate period. That ongoing support mattered because it meant the estate wasn't solely dependent on court proceedings to generate income for the kids. Revenue was still flowing through existing partnerships while Sam worked the legal process on the back end. In the summer of 2022, a second Marathon clothing location opened on Fairfax, one of the most competitive and culturally significant fashion retail corridors in Los Angeles. That didn't come easy. Sam revealed on the Earn Your Leisure podcast that when they were searching for a Fairfax or Melrose location, landlords simply refused to lease to them. The Marathon brand, despite its cultural weight, was still getting blocked at the door by the same institutional resistance that Black-owned businesses have always faced in premium retail spaces. They had to bring in Roc Nation's top real estate person just to get a landlord to the table. That kind of friction would have ended a lot of people's efforts. Sam pushed through it because he understood what a second location represented: proof that the Marathon hadn't stalled, that the brand was still expanding on its own terms, and that Nipsey's blueprint for building rather than just talking was still being executed 3 years after his death. Marathon Burger was launched as an extension of the brand, adding another revenue-generating arm to the business portfolio. The trademark portfolio, the Marathon clothing mark, the All Money In mark, the Marathon Continue slogan, was maintained, protected, and actively enforced rather than allowed to sit dormant and lose legal standing. On Earn Your Leisure, Sam told hosts Troy Millings and Rashad Bilal that the real estate value in Nipsey's kids' names had already doubled since they acquired it. He wasn't speaking sentimentally. He was reporting a fact about property appreciation on the very block Nipsey had purchased and fought to own before he died. And through all of that, Sam was simultaneously managing a level of legal complexity that most people following this story never fully understood. The guardianship of Imani Asghedom, Nipsey's daughter from his earlier relationship with Tanisha Foster, became the subject of a prolonged court dispute that created serious complications for the estate proceedings over several years. Tanisha Foster had been involved in litigation concerning Imani's guardianship and her access to the estate, and those proceedings dragged on for a significant portion of the probate period. The details remain partially sealed out of respect for the minors involved. But what the public record shows is that Black Sam and the Asghedom family ultimately prevailed. Guardianship over Imani's inheritance was secured by the family. That dispute was finally resolved in 2025. And that resolution is what cleared the path for the estate to move toward its final court-approved distribution. That timing matters. The guardianship issue wasn't a side complication. It was one of the central legal obstacles standing between the probate process and its conclusion. Until it was resolved, the estate couldn't close. And the fact that it was resolved in the family's favor is what made the July 2026 distribution possible. Managing an estate, defending a guardianship in court, expanding a brand, protecting a trademark portfolio, and running multiple active businesses simultaneously while publicly grieving your brother and carrying the weight of a legacy that an entire neighborhood was watching is not something that gets acknowledged enough in the conversation around what this family went through. Black Sam was doing all of it at the same time for 7 consecutive years without losing the thread of what it was all for. The result was finalized on July 5, 2026. A California court approved the equal distribution of the estate, valued at approximately $11 million, to Imani Asghedom and Cross Asghedom. Each child received a 50% share. Lauren London, Cross's mother, and Nipsey's longtime partner, executed documents confirming that her son had received his portion of the estate. The probate filings identifying the specific monetary values allocated to each child remain sealed, but the categories of assets transferred are a matter of public record. The estate released a statement confirming that Nipsey's assets had been distributed to their rightful beneficiaries, his children, and expressed commitment to protecting the family's privacy while honoring the legacy going forward. More than 7 years after Nipsey was killed outside his own store, the legal chapter was officially closed. Now let's talk about what Imani and Cross actually inherited, because this is where the story gets even more significant. When most people hear $11 million and 2 kids, they picture a trust fund with a pile of cash sitting in an account somewhere. That is not what these children received. The estate included cash, yes, but it also included 100% interest in the Marathon Clothing Inc., 100% membership interest in All Money Inc., 100% interest in Marathon Studios, 100% interest in Marathon Touring, ownership interest in additional business entities, and the full trademark portfolio connected to the Marathon brand. What that means in real terms is that Imani and Cross didn't receive a one-time payout. They received ownership of active businesses and intellectual property that continue generating revenue. Royalties from Nipsey's music catalog keep paying out. The Marathon stores keep operating. The trademarks keep producing licensing income. These are assets designed to produce wealth for years, potentially for decades. Not a lump sum that can be spent and gone. Because both children are still minors, their inheritances remain under guardian oversight. Lauren London maintains sole guardianship over Cross's share. Black Sam and the Askidum family manage Imani's inheritance. That structure is not incidental. Courts require it for minor beneficiaries specifically to prevent the kind of mismanagement that has historically eroded celebrity estates before the next generation is old enough to protect what they have. There are too many stories in hip-hop and entertainment of children inheriting large sums at young ages only to have those assets disappear through bad financial decisions, exploitative advisors, or simply a lack of the structural protection that probate courts are designed to provide. The guardian oversight that exists around Imani and Cross's inheritance is the same structure Nipsey himself would have wanted. He wasn't building for a one-time payout. He was building for a future that extended well past his own presence. The trust and guardianship framework preserves that future. In Imani's case specifically, it means the businesses her father built won't be diminished or misdirected before she's old enough to understand what she owns, what it generates, and what it costs to build it. When she comes of age, she won't be handed a story about what her father used to have. She'll be handed active companies that have been running and growing for the better part of a decade under her uncle's watch. That is an entirely different inheritance. When Black Sam spoke publicly about the inheritance, he kept returning to the same theme. He said, "When I say we own it, it's in Hustle's kids' names in their trust funds, so they know when they get older. This is something their father worked for and that they own." He told Earn Your Leisure that having a brick and mortar and being able to pass it down through the family is what matters. He told CBS News that the Marathon brand was created to inspire and motivate, and that anything they can continue doing in that spirit is always a blessing. None of that is a statement about a dollar figure. All of it is a statement about purpose. And that distinction between money and purpose is precisely what has made Sam's stewardship of this estate something the business world and the hip-hop world have both sat up to pay attention to. In a landscape where estates routinely collapse into legal disasters, where assets get liquidated for pennies on the dollar, and children grow up to discover their parents' empire existed on paper but not in practice, what happened with Nipsey's estate is a genuine exception. The administrator refused to take shortcuts. He refused to liquidate for speed. He spent 7 years operating, expanding, and defending. When the court finally approved the distribution, the number had grown from 4 million to nearly 11. The businesses were running, the brand had equity, the property had appreciated. The Puma partnership was still active. Marathon Burger was operational. The second store location was open. All of it intact. All of it in the children's names. And the way the estate chose to communicate when it was all finalized said everything. The public statement didn't lead with the dollar figure. It said the estate had been distributed to his rightful beneficiaries, Nipsey's children, and committed to honoring his legacy while protecting their privacy. That framing, legacy first, money second, is exactly how Nipsey himself always talked about what he was building. Black Sam understood that, and it showed in every decision he made from the moment he was appointed administrator to the moment the court closed the case. Nipsey Hussle spent his entire career making the argument that ownership was the only thing that created wealth that lasted. Not income, not streams, not endorsement checks. Ownership. He gave a famous interview where he broke it down using Twitter as an example. He pointed out that when an artist tells 10 million people to follow them on a platform, they've just added real economic value to a company they have no stake in. The platform's valuation goes up. The founders get richer. The artist walks away with followers, not equity. He saw the same dynamic playing out in the music industry every single day. Artists created the cultural value that made labels worth billions, signed deals that handed over their recordings and their publishing, and then watched someone else collect the long-term wealth generated by their work. He refused to participate in that system on those terms. He structured every deal to prevent it from happening to him. He kept his masters, he kept his publishing. He retained control of his label and his roster even after signing with Atlantic. He bought the block where his store sat so he wouldn't be a tenant in the neighborhood he was trying to own. He built businesses that generated revenue independently of whether the radio was playing his music that week, because he understood that dependence on any single income stream was a form of vulnerability. He used the phrase, "all money in, no money out," as a reminder that every dollar made was supposed to be redirected into something that built equity rather than just spending power. And now, because of all of that, because of the structures he built, and because Black Sam honored and protected those structures while the courts moved slowly and the legal disputes got resolved one at a time, Imani and Cross Asghedom are inheriting ownership. Not a check, not a memory. Ownership, the kind that compounds, the kind that passes down through generations exactly the way Nipsey always said it should. What Black Sam built over those 7 years is its own kind of legacy, not just as a brother, but as an administrator, as a businessman, and as someone who understood that stewardship is not a passive role. It requires active decision-making, legal tenacity, business development, and an absolute refusal to settle for less than what the person who built the empire originally deserved. Most people who are handed an estate in the middle of grief, in the middle of a media storm, with courts and legal disputes and competing parties, all pulling in different directions, they take the path of least resistance. They find a way to close it out and move on. Sam didn't move on. He moved forward. He expanded the Marathon brand while simultaneously navigating probate proceedings, defending a guardianship dispute, and managing trademark litigation. He kept the existing businesses profitable while building new ones. He made sure the property appreciated rather than sat idle. He did all of that under conditions that would have broken most people, and he did it without making it about himself. Every time he spoke publicly about the estate, every time he sat down on Earn Your Leisure or spoke to CBS News, the conversation wasn't about Black Sam. It was about the children. It was about Nipsey's vision. It was about ownership. That consistency over 7 years is exactly what made his response to the final court ruling land the way it did. Because everything he said reflected everything he had done. And everything he had done reflected everything Nipsey had taught him and trusted him to carry forward. At the end of the day, the most lasting legacy Nipsey Hussle may have created is not Victory Lap, as great as that album is. It might not even be the Marathon clothing, as significant as that story is to South Los Angeles. It might be the proof of concept, the documented evidence in probate filings and court records and business registrations and podcast interviews that it is possible to build something genuinely durable to die without a will and still have your children inherit something real. As long as the right person is protecting it with the right values and the right level of patience, Black Sam was that person. 7 years after Ermias Asghedom was taken from the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson, his children have officially inherited everything he worked to build. Not because the system made it easy, because someone who loved him refused to let it be hard enough to stop them. The marathon didn't just continue. It proved something. That's the story, fam. Drop your thoughts in the comments on what Black Sam did with this estate, and make sure you check the video on screen for more.